ATS presents The Realty Debate, powered by Tata Capital, with Manisha Natarajan.
These are testing times for India's real estate industry. Home sales have slowed down across the country and all eyes are now on the festive season, especially in the Hindi-speaking states where the beginning of Navratri is considered a very auspicious time to buy real estate. The question we are asking today in the Realty Debate, is the festive season going to revive the mood and the spirit and also the prices for the sector? Is it the time for you to move from the sidelines to the arena of buying property? My guests today to answer some of those important questions are some of the most or the biggest credible voices in the industry. Irfan Razak, CMD Prestige Group and Chairman Credai. Bamanar Irani, CMD Rustamji and VP MCHI Credai. Gitambar Anand, Chairman and Managing Director of ATS Infrastructure and President Credai. Anshuman Magazine, CMD CBRE South Asia Private Limited, and Gulam Zia, Executive Director, Knight Frank. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining in. Before I start and come to you, let me just, for our audience, tell them what are the 5 big questions that we are going to seek answers to. Number 1, I think this is what is weighing on everybody's head. Is there a real demand and supply mismatch in the housing market today? Why is inventory overhang at an all-time high of 7 or across 7 top cities? Why is it an all-time high? Why is the buyer hesitating to buy today? Have the prices run up too much, affecting affordability? Or is the larger economic dullness translating to stagnant sales? Is there room for prices to further come down in certain markets? That's a question number 3. Question number 4, what should the buyer do this festive season if there is no cost to waiting? Should he wait it out or should he start putting money on the table? So let me start with Mr. Razak first. Mr. Razak, I know you get really upset when we talk about inventory overhang, and you've mentioned this before on this show that look, you're calculating inventory overhang in completely the wrong way. But there is no denying, sir, that there is some amount of mismatch in what is available in the market and what the real demand is for. The sales have slowed down. Isn't that correct?
See, it's a yes and a no. The reason is people want to buy, people need a house. There's no doubt about it. It all depends on which micro market, which location, at what price and what their budget is. Now with all this talk about realty slowing down, which is badgering them day on day, week on week, so people who used to take a decision across the table and used to be quite excited in committing themselves, now are taking time. They're thinking, look, am I making a mistake? Look, if I wait for some more time, am I going to get a better deal? Or, if I negotiate a little more, will I get a better, sort of offer? So all this, it's a very mixed reaction. It's a very mixed basket at the moment. But to tell you a fact, there are sales which are happening on ground. There's no such thing as no sales are happening. People are committing themselves both for high-priced properties as well as mid-income group properties. But the convincing that needs to be done is a lot more. A lot more effort is required now. But one thing which is good is the fluff from the market has gone. The so-called people who were trying to punt and trying to they're trying to make short-term gains, that the top layer is completely disappeared. Today, whoever is buying for themselves. It's the actual user, and they're buying to keep. And so that way, I believe it's good, healthy for the market. Now, the second thing that we keep on talking about, the mismatch between demand and supply. If you really take the ready inventory, I don't think there's that much of inventory at all which is ready. When I say I don't think, there is no ready inventory that is going to cause any pain or agony to anyone, not only in Bengaluru but across the country. Now, where do you have this numbers coming from? Which is inventory under production. That inventory takes anywhere between now, starting from now to next 4 years, 5 years. We don't even know whether that inventory will ever be ready. So when the launch is done, so all the analysts who take this, they add up that inventory and say there's so much inventory. But the actual fact is, if somebody wants a home in a decent location and wants to invest immediately, he doesn't have much of a choice, and he only has to buy not from the developer but from the secondary market, which is the resale market, for which we as developers have no control over. Okay. So it's basically That's how the situation is.
All right. Fair enough, Mr. Razak, point taken, but I'm just going to go back to what the industry has been used to calculating in terms of inventory overhang, because projects were being sold by developers at launch. I think that's how they've been calculated. I'm going to just read out the numbers again, because these numbers are very well widely reported, and I think we either need to come to an understanding that yes, these are numbers that we should be looking at, or as Mr. Razak said, these are not the numbers we should be looking at, and why not? I mean, maybe there's a time for an overhaul of this number. Now, if you look at NCI inventory overhang, or time it takes for all the unsold homes to sell in the National Capital Region, the figure actually spans from 42 months to 67 months, or more than 5 years. So these could be projects which are newly launched, not ready projects or ready to move in projects, but even the number of projects launched, what used to sell on paper is not selling. At least that's where the consensus is. In MMR, it will take 2 to 3 years for current stock of unsold homes to clear the property market. And if I take South, well, the IT capitals are much better off. Unsold homes here will take anywhere between 22 to 33 months to go off the shelf. Anshuman Magazine, are we calculating inventory overhang completely wrong? Would you agree with Mr. Razak that why are we taking from the time that the project is launched, and why are we assuming it should sell? The whole market has changed, and we should only be taking ready flats which are unsold.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Mr. Razak. The fact is, what should be looked at, according to me, is what is finished, completed and lying unsold. I think that inventory is hardly there, because unlike a lot of other countries, in India, we do pre-sell most of the developments. I think it's also misplaced expectations. When the market was doing really well, everything sold so quickly. Now, if we keep that as a benchmark, no doubt the market is slow. But if you take it like in a normal way, then right now when the construction happens, sales happen. But when you say unsold inventory, it's really on paper. Again, I would say whatever numbers I have, completed unsold apartments, I mean, that's hardly a inventory hangout. And you said, is there a mismatch between demand and supply? I feel there is a mismatch between demand and supply, because demand far exceeds the right supply. I think the other problem is there's no dearth of demand. It's just that in some cases the prices have gone up too high, and as the right price product comes in, and as the economy improves, I think the sales will start picking up. But right now,
there is a demand-supply mismatch. All right. So here's my question, Baman Irani, and of course, let's call a spade a spade. If a developer is going to start selling from the launch of the project and expecting the buyer to buy in when the project has just been launched, then why would you not calculate inventory overhang from the time that the developer starts selling?
That you should also understand is, like my chairman, Mr. Razak, just said, that if you actually put an ad in a paper today, especially in the MMR region, and say only 100 flats are required by a bank or a financial institution, and these 100 flats should be those, in one locality, any locality around, and they should be ready for possession within 6 months' time, I assure you, except for, 20 flats in one region or 25 flats in one region, you might not get all 100 in one area. So saying that there's an overhang of about 3 to 4 years is actually not very well calibrated. I don't want to go into how it should be calibrated, but it is definitely not giving you a real sense of what's happening on the ground. And last, Manisha, you should also appreciate that if every single day the media only carries bad news, it is very difficult for someone out there to go out and put his money in. What's really happening is the educated buyer who's able to predict the trend in the market is going out there and making purchases. So we are seeing some very high-end priced purchases taking place, much better than the low-end part of the market. But then those who are not as educated are holding on, and the day they come out into the market to purchase, they're going to wind up spending a little more or paying a little more for it. So this is the anomaly that one should really
So what you're saying is a savvy investors already looking at what's going on in the market, finding bargains and ready to put in large chunks of money. Is the middle investor who's really a worried lot. Ghulam Zia, would you agree with that, the media is making too much of the unsold supply, the inventory overhang figure, and forget about that. Just constantly talking about the fact that real estate sales have slowed down. Are we hyping it too much? Are we guilty of that? Or this is really a dark time for real estate? I mean, I'm not going to say it because I've always felt that, look, if you're an end buyer, you must go out and buy. There is no right or wrong time. There's only a right product at the right price. But what are things looking like on the ground?
Well, first of all, I don't want to be a participant in trial of media.
Okay,
I'm not here to tell you that media is right or wrong. I will just give my assessment of how the things are. Well, on one side, there is a reality in what other panelists are talking about, which is the inventory, the way it is presented, is looking scary. I have always maintained that, especially in markets like Mumbai, where the construction period is prolonging, because we're going vertical. So today we have 4 years, 5 years kind of project completion times. So inventory cannot be looked in isolation without taking into account the time to complete. Having said that, the reality still is that the sales have slowed down. Now, because sales have slowed down, does it really mean that there is no demand? I once again don't believe that. Because the sales have slowed down because lots of factors. One of them can possibly be the role that media has been playing, where people who wanted to sign the dotted lines are actually waiting in the wings, and that anticipation that perhaps tomorrow I'll get a better deal. And because of which the buyers have gone out of the market. So there's a complete exodus kind of thing that we're seeing, at least in northern market, not so much in south market. Mumbai has always been somewhere in between. So overall, the flight of buyers is a big concern. And I'm sure the buyers are out there. It is not that the economy has suddenly slummed and suddenly there is no money in the in the country. There is money, there is requirement, but buyers are actually waiting because they want to get a better deal. That's it. So if there is a good deal, I would definitely see all the buyers coming back and signing the dotted line.
All right, so let's get to that question. And Gitambar has been waiting by very patiently. I wanted to, come to him after he'd heard all the arguments here. Will the buyer get a better deal, Gitambar? I mean, all the times I read headlines like, who's going to blink first, the developer or the buyer? The buyer says, look, prices should come down now because the developers aren't being able to sell. Developers say, where is the room? I mean, if you really look at it, and this is something which I've captured as well in some of the things that I've written before, that in hidden or not so hidden, very obvious ways, prices have actually moderated to a large extent. So tell me, who's going to blink first? And is the buyer right in thinking that at some point of time, there will be a crackdown and prices are likely to come down further?
So Manisha, very rightly, I've been listening to everybody, and what I would like to, there are two things I would like to say. One is, and let me tell you that everybody is very right in their own way in whatever they have said. So two things. First and foremost, yes, it's the right time for the buyer to buy, because we have seen that in the last year and a half, prices have corrected from between 15 to 20%. And let us look at a pan-India situation and not just at grade 1 metros. So the prices have corrected 15 to 20%, and there is no more room at the builder's end to correct prices further. So that is an established fact. So whatever deal you are getting now with some freebies, maybe with some extras thrown in, maybe cupboards or that, the light fittings or whatever, just go for it, take it, sign on the dotted line, because this is the best time to buy. Number two, yes, this data about overhang in inventory has been widely reported, but my question is, what is the source of this data? Who has collated it? Because wherever you read, whichever news item you read about property and real estate overhang, the figures are very nearby to each other, and I think most of the data mining has been done on the internet. So there is somebody who's posted this data on the net. Now, where did that somebody get his information from? Because apparently nobody from our organization got a call. We are 12,000 members, close to 12,000, and nobody received a call from any person who was doing a research on how much overhang in property there is. So what is the source? What is the authenticity of this data? Unfortunately, it has been lapped up by the media very rightly, as I think that was Ghulam saying that. It has just been, taken up by the media so aggressively, and it has been widely broadcast that there is this huge overhang of inventory and, prices are going to crash. This is not the right time to buy. So the message that has gone to the buyer, unfortunately so to the end user, as Irfan says, today, yes, I agree with him. The buyer is the person who wants to live and use that house himself. So the message that went to him was, wait a while, because there's a huge inventory overhang and it's not going to finish off in a hurry. 42 months, 60 months, so many apartments unsold. So just wait and you'll get a great deal. So what happened was that in the last 15 to 20 months, for whatever reason, the apartment prices have dropped by 15 to 20%, but there is an input cost increase of more than 15 to 20% year on year. There's labor increment, there's raw material increment. So there's no way a developer can give a haircut on the price any further. So this is the best time to buy, and I would advise all discerning buyers, home buyers watching this show, identify your project, identify your developer, and go and sit down and you see what better he can do for you, and just close that deal. Because maybe, you know, if things improve in the next, you know, couple of months or 4 months or 6 months, maybe you don't get this deal again.
All right. Okay. So this is the right time to buy. Developers don't have any room to cut prices anymore. Mr. Razak, I'm going to come to you and say, is that a fact? There is, I mean, I've already heard this, that they've got reduced margins in your business, have got reduced to manufacturing numbers, which is, you know, single digit margins. Are we saying that there is absolutely no room to cut prices, except probably by developers who are deeply distressed? Those will be small pockets, and that could be just probably 10% of any market?
See, Manisha, the prices can get cut if we are overpriced. Now, if you look at all the listed companies' margins, they are all single digits. The PAT margins I'm talking about, it's 8, 9, 10%. Now, if a company cannot earn 8, 9 and 10% margin after taxes, then there's no reason for them to be in business after taking all that stress. See, we are not working with such huge margins, or we are not in wastages. And plus, another thing that is happening, which I am seeing the trend again in our own company, is there are lots of cost overruns that are hitting us. Somewhere or the other, there's more and more expenses that are coming up than what we budgeted. So that also is going and hitting into our bottom line. So having had that scenario, I don't understand how a price of a unit can ever get reduced, unless it's some very fancy development where you've really priced it very high, and then you have a little leeway to give a discount, and that's all that can happen. See, there are two parts. One is the primary market, which the developers are offering, and like Gitambar also said, when we are now doing new launches, we are very conscious of the fact of the affordability barrier. We are very conscious of the fact that at what price the market can accept the number, and we are launching at a much lower number than what we would have normally launched if the market was really doing well. That's the primary market. Now, in the secondary market, you see, the price would have, supposing I have launched a project 3 years ago, and gradually the price has gone up over the last 3 years, and the expectations of the seller would be almost double the price than what he had bought it for. That thing, depending on the need of the money that is by the person who's bought it for investment, he will give a break on the price, but still he'll be making a lot more money than what the developer will ever make. I always say this, when the developer builds and sells, the person who, when the person buys, the buyer is always the beneficiary. It is not the developer. So it's the numbers are definitely stacked up in the buyer's favor, and whoever commits to buy a home directly from the developer stands to gain in the long term, especially if he's pre-booking and waiting for the house to get built over the 3 or 4 years. History has said that, and I think it keeps repeating itself again and again. So I don't think there's any insecurity for any of the buyers to wait and watch, because the more they wait, ultimately they're going to pay more. They're not going to pay less.
There are many questions which still need to be answered. My worry now, in fact, is a different one. New launches across India have gone down tremendously. In Bangalore city, they're down 67% between January to May 2015 compared to the same months in 2013. In other key markets, they're down by 30 to 50%. And if you compare the figure to 2010, well, the numbers are down even more heavily. So what does that do? Is there going to be a situation soon where the demand-supply mismatch, forget about it, your choices itself are going to get reduced? And how will all of that play out in the market in terms of prices, and what you should be doing with your decision to buy real estate in this festive season? Stay with us. We'll be back in just a moment.